we are making that pledge once again to never forget. And it's not only about the dozens of us who are standing here on this beautiful morning to remember a true hero, but I think what's more important about today is the future. And what I say about the future is when those of us here are long gone off of Lydia and Valentine's, we want young kids riding their bike down this block or leaving that school to look up at that sign and say, who was Daniel Monahan? What did he stand for? Why is there a street named after him? And that's why we do this. It's not only to remember the individuals who served and paid and made that ultimate sacrifice, but it's to protect and preserve their legacies and the traditions and everything we hold dear.
Some years ago, Frank Siller, who's the head of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, told me a story that I think has great meaning for this ceremony today. He said at his first communion, coming from a poor family, he was able to collect $28 in gifts. He said he never had $28. And he was thrilled until his family said to him, Frank, you got to give half of that away to a family that's poor. So he gave $14 to a family down the street. He said to me, Rabbi, I always have remembered what I did with what I gave, but I never remember what I did with what I kept. I think the lesson is for all of us, that we recall someone today who didn't keep much for himself, but gave to everyone else. It is said that when we are reunited with loved ones in the next world, and they ask us, what did you do after we left you? We will say, we never forgot you.
He was afraid people would forget him after he was gone. So trying to light the mood, I said, oh, Danny, nobody will ever forget you. And all of us know that's true. And so now this street sign is, one more way that Danny will be remembered, not in a way that he ever thought, but at least this will be here for, years and years to come. And my grandchildren will, come by and see it, and eventually they'll get married and have kids. So it's a gift that will keep on giving for a long time.
My father was everything everyone and myself needed to feel safe, be rescued in times of need, and be taken care of. He, without a second thought, drove down to 9/11 and spent 6 months there helping with recovery efforts. My dad was always worried he'd be forgotten, but somehow even people who've only met him for just 42 minutes carry his memory. A former student of mine, Justin Sanchez, was in 7th grade when my father came to career day. It was the only class that ever got to meet my father in 2014. Fast forward 6 years later, and that same student reached out and asked me to write him a letter of recommendation for him to get into the EMT FDNY Academy. Just a week ago, that same student sent me a photo of him in an EMT FDNY uniform and told me that meeting my father had helped him decide what he wanted to be when he grew up.
It's hard to believe that on Monday it'll be 8 years since Danny's been gone. I've had many conversations with him over that time, even had a beer or two at the bar set aside for him. Just give me a few years, I'll be that old man sitting in the corner of the bar, having arguments with myself, talking to Danny. Megan, I used to tease your dad that he was getting soft after you were born. I remember him telling me just to wait till you have kids and you'll understand. He was right. You were such a blessing and he loved you so much. Connor, Jack, Juliet, your Gramps was an amazing man who I truly loved. This honor for him today is something he would definitely want for you guys more so than for himself.
And as I was walking over, one of the neighbors said, what's going on? I said, we're doing a street dedication. And they wanted to know more. They wanted to come on over. And they're standing here now in the back. And that's going to be the lasting legacy, Jerry, for you and your family to always know. That your husband, though he retired, felt the need, felt the obligation, felt something that so many people don't recognize. And frankly, I don't know if I could have that kind of caliber. That they felt on that day they had to get in there to help save lives. They had to work to make sure that wall didn't collapse. with the unique background he had both in the fire service and the heavy operation equipment. That's a real hero. That's a legacy. And that's what it's about here today. Taking the time to recognize a true American hero and remember from this day forward, when that sign's unveiled, his legacy will be on this intersection. His legacy will be across from that street. And you do hope when people walk by with their children, their loved ones, they say, well, tell us a little about him. And you can. And you can share those stories. And let this small token of this street dedication be a reminder to you of the love you had with him, the wonderful family you grew up and raised in this community, the friends and family that have taken the time to remember, but the lasting legacy he will have for generations to come as they pass this intersection to know that a true American hero lived on this block